Hello guys, and hello and welcome to another episode of With Enough Prep Time. Today, I'm going to be uh, just discussing the new Justice League versus the Suicide Squad game, um, and the reactions to it, specifically reactions regarding um, uh, the the Batman is killed, or Batman is killed, and all the controversy surrounding Kevin Conroy's final performance. Um, and I want to say that this is probably going to be like one of my last streams. I might turn up every once in a while on K Dot's channel. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I'm kind of, at least until I move from the Czech Republic, which I'm planning to do very soon. I don't want to be streaming so much. Um, yeah, so this is going to be one of my last streams. And because of that, I want to say goodbye, and I want to say um, as much as I can about how I feel about the current state of comic book fandom, because I think for the most part it's over. It's really finished. We are heading into a generation now that never even read comic books, that don't really care to read comic books at all. Um, and um, so, uh, yeah, this is a completely, maybe they read mangas at best. But they certainly, these kids aren't growing up with comic books other than in movies. That's where they see comic book characters, superheroes. So they have no investment in these characters beyond what they see on film. And where we've got to at this point in time in um, the film space specifically, um, is a place of absolute toxicity, racism, rampant racism, sexism, um, just ugliness. Whereas the stuff I grew up with when I was reading comics, all of it came from love of these characters, love of what they meant. Um, just being happy to even see uh, a hero that I loved or that I read in comics grace the silver screen, or just being happy to discover a new superhero that I hadn't even read in comics or seen in cartoons, um, and be introduced to them and discover them with everybody else. And, for the most part, going to these cinemas and going and watching these cartoons, and it being just a space of love, like going into school. Oh, the oft discussions about who would win, Batman or Spider-Man, that kind of thing. Um, I think pretty much all of that love has been taken over by just this warped sense of entitlement that people have over these characters. Um, I, Sometimes I say like I was part of this problem, and I was, to a degree. Um, you know, I will say, oh, well, I had valid criticisms of movies that I didn't like. Um, but in the end of the day, I did have some valid criticisms, but I also had criticisms that came from a place that is similar to the place that I'm criticizing people now for going to with these characters. Um, but let's get into it. Let's get into what's been happening recently. Um, and I hope everybody's okay. I hope everyone is feeling good. They're happy wherever you are. But yeah, I came on here, as I said, I want this to be, if this isn't my last stream, I don't know. But like, if it's one of my last streams, I wanted to really, really talk about um, what, you know, what this thing of the Suicide Squad, what it symbolizes, what the reaction to this game kind of symbolizes. Um, and so um, let me start off with this. Okay, so that I come from a point of view. First of all, I've watched the Suicide Squad game, the cutscenes. I haven't bought the game yet because I don't have the console because I sold my console ages ago. And I didn't really, like I bought a PlayStation 2, no, sorry, a PlayStation 4 or whatever, and I bought it simply to get. That's how much I love these characters. Simply to get Injustice and the Arkham games as well. That's the only reason I bought PlayStation 2. It's a PlayStation 4 a long, long time ago. And then I realized, I played it for a day, watched the movie cutscenes versions, and I just realized I don't really enjoy playing games. you know. Um, I mean, I do for like about an hour or whatever, and then I'm just like, I'm not really into it. Um, so I'm not a gamer. I'm not of that generation, especially like these new like really cool 3D versions of these games. Like it's just not the generation I grew up with. So I kind of ended up selling my PlayStation 4 quite quickly, and just realizing like actually I'm better off just watching the whatever cutscenes they have on YouTube rather than buying a whole console just to get these games. But with DC, I love it so much I could probably end up buying this game just to give it some money just to support it because it's got characters I love in it. Um, so the first thing I'll say about the game is, at least the cutscenes, I haven't actually played the game. The gameplay is elusive to me. I don't know if playing the game itself is actually fun. So in terms of criticisms of that, it's hard for me to go into that. But I will say this, that most of the criticism I see towards the game has nothing to do with the gameplay, and it has everything to do with what happens in the cutscenes themselves. So that's the first thing. If you're there, like say, you can let me know that you can hear me and say hi, um, in the chat, just so I know that everyone can hear me clearly. If I should put my volume up or anything like that. Um, so most of the criticisms have come from the cutscenes, and from what I've seen of this long 3.5 hour movie of this game, is the quality is no better or worse than say Injustice 2. I've sat through the movie versions of the Arkham games as well, and to me, those games, there's pretty much the same level of storytelling um, as well. So the level of storytelling in this game, if you think that this is bad, then you should have thought all of those other ones were bad as well, because the level of storytelling and the knowledge of the characters involved in, like, say, Injustice, the way they portrayed the characters in Injustice is almost identical to this game, right? So there's no difference there. Um, so I'm not saying I love this story, like I'm in love with the story. I'm not saying I'm in love with the characterization. I see flaws in it, um, but I don't see where it diverges so far from what uh, I've seen before in the series of games leading up to this, based around DC characters and the stories that they would tell with those DC characters. It's a similar level of storytelling. Um, I'd also say that one of the only difference that I would see between, say, for instance, the Arkham games and this game is that I would have liked more focus to go on, since they were setting this story in um they were setting this story in Metropolis. I would have liked to see Metropolis more as a city um that is very different from um, you know, from um, from Gotham, right? Which most of the games that we've seen before have been set in Gotham. Um, this game seems to not even explore the world of um, Metropolis as much as Injustice explored the different worlds of all the DC characters, which is really funny to me because Injustice is all over the place, but I got a sense of place more in Injustice, when I visited the world of Aquaman, or, Atlantis, or Themyscira, or any of the places within Injustice. I got more of a sense of what was going on in those different geographical locations than I did even in this game. And certainly in the Arkham games, the world of Gotham is really rich. Um, so that's one of the things I didn't find that pleasant about this game. But maybe if I was playing the game, and actually walking around the streets, playing the game and being able to explore, then I would have seen the little details that I did not see when watching the cutscenes, because the cutscenes didn't really seem to explore Metropolis. It could have been anywhere. It could have been Gotham. It could have been anywhere. Some other things I really didn't like about the game, just fanboy stuff. I thought that the Wonder Woman was a little bit underpowered, in the game, and I didn't love her fight against Superman. So, because I thought she was too underpowered in that fight. Um, and yeah, I mean, those are the main things, that I didn't love about this game. Another thing I will say about this game in its favor is that I actually enjoy this Suicide Squad story for the most part more than I like both Suicide Squad films. So I think this did a better job of doing a Suicide Squad movie than actually the films did. So let's get onto the controversy. The controversy mainly surrounds how the Justice League were killed. And it started off this groundswell of outrage about how the Justice League had been killed. Started off with the uh, when it was shown that Batman, voiced by Kevin Conroy in his last ever performance, was going to be killed by the Suicide Squad. Now, let's set aside the fact that this is called Justice League. Sorry, Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. So the title kind of gives it away that the Justice League are going to be in some kind of peril. And they've been mind controlled by Brainiac, and the only way for the Justice League to or for their world to be okay is that the Justice League have to be killed by the Suicide Squad. So that's the premise. Um, now, having said that, um, I'm getting all these messages. Uh, now, having said that, so Kevin Conroy, this is his last voice performance um, uh, as the character, basically, of Batman. And everybody thought that he should get some kind of special send off, I guess, um, because it is his last voice acting job. Now, I haven't seen the end credits, and I haven't seen if there's any kind of um, I didn't see if there was any kind of tribute or anything like that in the end credits to Kevin Conroy and all the work he's done on Batman, because I think that would have been appropriate. But I do not, for any reason, believe that they should build a whole story around Kevin Conroy's death and change the game that they've been working on for probably 10 years because the man died last year. This is a game that's been being worked on for several years before he even passed away. Secondly, we know that these characters aren't actually being killed. Like how um it's not even juvenile. It's like it's just this kind of entitled sense of, you know, the ownership of these characters that leads people to believe that they have the right to, you have the right to voice your opinion, but the toxic level in which, as if these people had committed, like I've seen Hitler talked about in nicer ways than people are talking about this game about superheroes. And I'm somebody who really takes superheroes, like I love them. I unabashedly love them and I enjoy them. And I think that when done well, these characters really do have meaning. But even me, I'm like, dude, do you know how many times Batman or Superman have been killed in the comics? Or how many times a character, Wonder Woman, how many times like they've done disrespectful killings of Wonder Woman in the comics? How many times that has happened? And we know as comic book fans, the reason why we're like, oh, I don't like that comic, right? So I'm not going to read that comic. I'm not going to go on online and bash everybody involved in writing that comic. Maybe I won't read anything that they do again, but yeah, I might voice my opinion, but to go on like there's some conspiratorial reason, that has to do with gender politics and being and white people being under attack or woke culture that and then to venomously go on um, this tirade of hate against the creators, how they're just they're stupid and they can't get anything right, and anybody could tell a simple story. You know, all of the kind of backlash that you see against this toxic backlash against this game and the people who made it. It's just like, dude, superheroes die in stories all the time. Sometimes they're good stories, sometimes they're bad stories, sometimes they're stories you like, sometimes they're stories you don't. But maybe even you could say the guy had a bad day in the office or whatever. But instead, it's, you know, let's bring it into some kind of conspiracy, some warped conspiracy that all of these people who made this game are woke and they're doing it, only making the women look good. Because Wonder Woman is the only one who doesn't get mind controlled or something like that. Which, by the way, I don't understand why she doesn't get mind controlled. They should have explained that in the game. Like maybe they could have said that the lasso of truth doesn't allow her to be mind controlled, or as long as she's got the lasso, because it's the lasso of truth, so she can only see truth. But they didn't even bother to do that in the game, which is kind of the lazy stuff that I didn't like in the game. Um, but yeah, so um, yeah, characters die. This is a history of things. And yes, it's unfortunate that Kevin Conroy had actually died, and they should have had some kind of tribute to him at the end of the game. Now, if people were attacking the game because, in the end of the game, they didn't do a tribute to Kevin Conroy, then I would understand, right? Like there definitely should be a tribute in memoriam. Maybe a little, in the credits show like all some moments of Kevin Conroy voicing the character, something like that. That would have been epic and good at the end of this game. And if people were complaining about that they didn't have that, then I could probably understand. But to claim that he is so sacrosanct, he is so, um, you know, cherished that he can't make a decision himself whether he in a game is going to die. Because remember, Kevin Conroy signed on for this, right? And we're attacking all of these makers of the game, right? But Kevin Conroy himself signed on to voice this Batman. And he knew that this Batman was going to die. So why are we as a community, and nobody says anything against Kevin Conroy. No one's going, "Oh, we hate you, Kevin Conroy, for doing this last performance where you basically essentially allowed yourself to be killed." No one's doing that. Everyone's just attacking the game, the creators of the game for writing a story. And as I said, I have heard Hitler himself talked about in a more positive light than these people are talking about people who made a fucking game and blaming them for all of this political nonsense that they're saying that the game is trying to spew towards them. How fragile do you have to be in your masculinity? How much of an incel do you have to be in your masculinity to be threatened by a fucking game? By the way, which stars three men and one woman, right? So I don't know where they're getting from that this game is some pro feminist. If it was some pro feminist game, wouldn't it be all of the Suicide Squad are women? And, none of the rest of the Suicide Squad do anything useful? Or wouldn't it be that Wonder Woman just beats the shit out of all of the Justice League, including Superman, with no problem? Wouldn't that be woke? I don't understand where this idea that this film, this Suicide Squad is woke is coming from, other than a cynical way of manipulating youth using games and films to and reviews of games and and films to spread your ugly, you know, um, racist, sexist rhetoric online and influence young people to be racist and sexist like you. This is what I see. with what's happening and what's happened to the space surrounding the discourse on games, and this goes, to Lord of the Rings. It goes to um, uh, um, uh, the Star Wars. It goes to DC. It goes to the MCU. It's a bunch of people online, on YouTube, on Twitter, using their supposed fandom of these characters to spread their venomous hatred against, whether it be women or girls, or their ludicrous paranoia about um, just some racial issues that they might have, to masquerade the fact that they're just fucking losers. A loser's a fucking loser in the end of the day, right? And, sometimes you're just a fucking loser in life, and it's nothing to do with your race or your gender or your sexuality or anything like that. You're just a fucking loser. That's it. And you're coming on here, you're spreading your fucking hatred around on the internet, making it this perverse, horrible place to fucking live in, spreading your lies, trying to make every, and look, I'm not here to fucking defend Hollywood or defend people working in games and making loads and loads of money producing games. I'm not here to come and defend those guys. I don't give a fuck about those guys. I really don't. They just make stuff that entertains and inspires me sometimes. I like to write stuff like that, so it inspires me sometimes. But I don't give a flying fuck about, someone like Scorsese, or the people that that have inspired me, in terms of filmmaking cinematically. I don't give a shit about them personally. I don't feel this need to come on and defend them. The only thing I'm defending is creativity. And that, in the end of the day, fuck you and your stupid ideas of, because let me make this clear, okay? A lot of people, um, in this space, including myself. It's an instinct we have. When you've sat down and read Superman comics, and you've read Wonder Woman comics, which most of these people who complain online and criticize online have not done. They don't read these comics, yet they complain and they bring up their venomous racism and hatred and pretend to be PhD professor experts on these characters, when nobody is an expert on these characters. Not even the comic book writers are experts on these characters. Nobody has the right to say that they are experts on characters who've been written by thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I love Wonder Woman, and I love Superman. These are my favorite characters. Batman, the Flash, Shazam, the X-Men. I love these characters, right? And I have read maybe 1% of their comic books, if not less, give, given that they've been writing comic books about these characters since the 19 fucking 40s. Do you think I have enough time in the world to have read, because that's the only way you can say you're an expert. That's the only way you can say, oh, this doesn't match up to the characters we know from the comics, right? There are certain, don't get me wrong, there is an essence to these characters. That is true. And if I was going to make a film or a comic book or anything like that, related to any character, the first thing I would do is I would look online and I'd go, okay, what are the 10 best comics of this character? What are the most popular comic books of this specific character? And then I would read them thoroughly. I wouldn't then therefore become an expert on that character. But I would read them thoroughly, and I would try and take from that what I feel is the essence of that character, and then I would distill that, and then I would make that character my own. I.e., I would say, yes, I want the essence of this character here. I want Superman to be a Boy Scout. But what does being a Boy Scout mean? What does being a Boy Scout mean to me? What does being the ultimate good guy mean to me? What does the fact that he's an alien mean to me? And I would want to tell a personal story about a universal character, a character who has universal qualities, because that's the kind of storytelling that I feel is interesting. That's the kind of storytelling I've always loved. When people take the character, not abuse it and make it into something that it isn't. Like, let's make Superman wear yellow and he's, an asshole or something like that. No, but in the end of the day, I still want to make a story that means something to me when it comes to this character, not trying to make every single person who's ever read Superman and who some people, for instance, there's a very famous run by Superman called Man of Steel, which a lot of people love. I'm trying to remember the writer. If anybody wants to tell me in the comments who the writer is, um, you know, please do. I think it's John Byrne, right? And it's a very, very famous storyline, and I fucking hate it. I don't like this version of Superman, but I'm happy that John Byrne, you know, made as much as I dislike it, I know that that is John Byrne's Superman. That's how he sees Superman. That's the lens through which he sees Superman. But it's one of his most popular comics. I don't understand why. I don't understand why people refer to it so much. I think it's not great, but that's just me, right? So to me, if people, had come to a film that I did of Superman, that I wrote, a script of Superman, which I actually, funnily enough, have. If I wrote a script of Superman and you're a John Byrne fan, you're probably not going to like my movie because I don't see Superman like that politically. I don't see Superman like that in terms of his characterization. I don't see Superman. I come from a completely different set of perspectives on Superman that have been shaped by very, very different writers. So my Superman, if you're a John Byrne fan, is probably not going to be your Superman, and you're probably not going to like my version of Superman. But I cannot sit around and try and anticipate what every single person has loved about Superman and try and make a film that gets everybody's version of Superman right, because that will be a terrible vanilla story. What I would have to do is research the character and try and present what I love about that character. And from what I've seen of Justice League Kills the Suicide Squad, for whatever I hate about it, whatever I love about it, whatever I'm kind of in the middle about it about, I see that these people who wrote this story, who put this story together, actually did do their research on these characters. They actually did read the comics, and they actually are telling a story of how they see these characters, the Suicide Squad, and what the Suicide Squad mean to them. And they've put them on a mission that you would probably find in a Suicide Squad comic. And they've got, obviously, most of the Justice League are brainwashed. So you're not going to get like the essence of Superman right when he's brainwashed. You're not going to get the essence of Green Lantern right when he's brainwashed. But for the most part, they have captured the essence of these characters. Now, I want to ask people a question in the chat, just to check. I don't know if people are listening or not, but just to check if you're listening, right? Take any character you love, right? Whether it be Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, um, anything. Let's take Batman, right? Because Batman is pretty fucking popular. So a lot of people have read Batman comics. Or you could take the X-Men, right? Ask yourself, given that the X-Men and Batman, so Batman has been written since the 1940s. Um, the X-Men have been written since the 1950s. Take those characters and ask yourself honestly, genuinely, and please answer me in the chat. How much of a percent of their comics do you genuinely believe you've read? Can you genuinely call yourself an expert? Some PhD, like if you could have a PhD on this character, you would have a P because you know so much. It's almost an omnipresent knowledge or omniscient knowledge of these characters. How much do you know about them, right? So ask yourself that. What percent of their comics have you actually ever read, right? That makes you this kind of expert on them. Because I'm going to be honest, of my favorite characters, I can't even say I think I've read 1% of their comics. So if a filmmaker, now this is the problem I have with filmmakers or people who do these games and stuff. It's less with the gamers because whenever I actually see the games that they make of these comic book characters, I get the feeling that the gamers have read the comics much more than the filmmakers read the comics. But I would genuinely choose, go online and research what are the most popular storylines. I would go on, you know, do at least a week of just trying to measure out like what stories come up again and again and again that people like of these characters, and I would read them all before I even touch the page of writing the story. Now if it was you know like thousands and thousands of comics. Obviously, I'm not going to read that. But like if I do Superman, I'm going to read Superman Birthright. I'm going to read All Star Superman. I'm going to read Superman for All Seasons. I'm going to read John Byrne's Man of Steel. I'm going to read maybe Superman Earth One. I'm going to read all of those kind of comics that are foundational comics that people. I'm going to read what's his name? Because for me, I love this guy, and he's what would inspire me when I'm thinking about making films about at least the DC characters. And I'm gonna tell you his name in just a second. I always do this. I forget names right when I'm about to say them. Got to be here. I'm sure. Uh, he did. He did, Mark Wade's um, Kingdom Come. I'm trying to remember his name. Not Neil Adams. Can anybody tell me who drew Mark Wade's Kingdom Come? Come on, somebody tell me who drew Mark Wade's Kingdom Come. But whoever that artist is, who is a great, great artist, and I do know his name. It's just like in the heat of the morning, I can't remember his name. But whoever drew him, he was amazing. And I've forgotten what I was talking about now because of this. Um, I know, right? I've forgotten the name. It's really annoying me. By the way, you can jump on. I don't know if you want to jump on. Rogue, here's the link. Your DC card. Yeah, I know. It's really annoying me. Um, Come on, Rogue. Tell me who it is. But anyway, you're done on YouTube. Yeah, I am. Um, but the point I'm trying to make is a why? Oh shit! Get out of here, man! Like, you're throwing me off now. Um, Alex Ross, thank you, thank you. Alex Ross, I love Alex Ross, and that would be my kind of influence for if I was like if I could think of the perfect, like when I read the story that he even wrote about Superman, I thought like, wow, the, this is getting the iconography of this character so right. Um, so yeah, that would be like definitely. I don't know why I always forget when I'm talking about it, like the names of these characters, and now I've forgotten what I was talking about in general. Annoying. Um, but I'll go to this as well. This is something that's really really important to me, right? That I was thinking about recently. Shifty as well. You're welcome on. This is something that I was talking about that you know about even myself when it comes to um, criticizing films and criticizing media about these characters. Um, I know the impulse, right? You know, to be like, oh, they got this wrong and they got that wrong and they got this wrong when they develop these scripts and they develop these characters. And as I said, I'm not here to defend Hollywood. I think Hollywood, for the most part, until recently, has done a terrible job with comic book characters. I mean, um, but I also remember that, outside of a very, very few cases like Batman and Robin and stuff like that, I always, when it was a character that, from a universe that I loved, specifically DC or the X-Men, I always went in with a degree of joy to watching these comic book movies. I never came out with this kind of venomous hatred. I mean, the only things that I came out with venomous hatred for when I first saw them was Batman and Robin, um, and the X Men 1 and 2, and that was just because they messed up Rogue. I thought it was terrible what they did with the Rogue, and I thought it was terrible what they did with Gambit. And I did. I came out with venomous hatred, and I probably would have, if Twitter was around then, I probably would have been first in line to be like, hating on everything about X Men 1 and all of that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't have been trying to tank the movie, and I wouldn't have been personally attacking the director, and saying that he made the film because he's woke, and that's why he made these characters like this, and all of the stuff that they do online now, this paranoia about everything regarding these films, that it's some personal slight or attack against them. No, maybe just somebody made a bad movie, or somebody made a bad game. I don't even think this game is particularly bad, but in terms of the cutscenes, it's just maybe someone had a bad day at the office. It's nothing personal against you. Not every film is, I guess, using an example, Captain Marvel, where clearly there is some kind of agenda behind it. Not every film is like that. And I'm so fed up. So what if it has a fucking agenda? Are you not old enough? Are you not mature enough in your own self to see beyond that agenda and just be like, okay, well, it has a fucking agenda. I don't agree with it. It's an agenda that I don't agree with. Is the film good or is the film bad? Pretty simple. Because V for Vendetta had an agenda, and that film was good. It had a blatant agenda. It had blatantly something it was saying about the world and politics and whatever. And it was part of it, and it was still entertainment. And it was a good film. So, Nerdman, the performance gift, right? The performative grift, right? Uh, Explain to me. What do you mean the performative grift? I was doing it one painfully slow letter at a time. Oh, Alex, okay. Yeah, I would have probably got it once you put AL, but I just didn't know even what you were doing when you just put A. Um, but what I was going to say is that I know the impulse, and it's a big impulse in me. I remember it specifically around the time of Man of Steel, where I was so I I I wasn't angry at the movie. I was angry at what they decided to do after the movie, in terms of like just running into Batman v Superman. And I was like, wait a second, you didn't even get a Superman movie right, and you want to run into Batman v Superman. But what I'll say is that the impulse, in terms of, I critique that movie on various different levels. Um, a lot of levels which I think are fair in terms of the storyline, but I also criticized it on the basis that it wasn't Superman. And and in my head, and this is what happens, I think, with a lot of people, I had already, once I saw those trailers, I had already made up my mind on what the film was going to be. I was already in my head, like, okay, I'm ready to see the film that I've made in my head, and of course I knew it wasn't going to be the exact film, but I thought it was going to follow along those lines. Maybe there'll be some differences, like 10 and 20% out, differences between the film that I saw in my head, that I wanted to go and see when I went and saw Man of Steel. And it was so far off from that film. And I was upset because and this is what I think most comic book fans feel. And this is where I think it comes from. Some of the criticism, some of the toxicity comes from somewhat of a genuine place, is that you feel, if only, you know, people could see what I see in my head, then they'd realize how great this character is, how meaningful this character is, how, if only people could see that Superman who stood up on top of a building as a this girl was about to commit suicide, and just it wasn't going around, punching dark side or something like that, but actually just took the time to stop and comfort a girl who was in her darkest space. And I still wish they'd show that scene, in a Superman film. I hope one day I do get to see that film. But I was like, if only they could see that character, if only they could make that character relatable the way that I see that character as relatable. Not just like some saint who goes around always doing nice things, but just a good, guy who is a guy in every other way, but has this impulse to do these good things. If only they could see that version of the character that I have in my head, but also the version where, there is like this story of him being an alien and the implications of him being an alien and all that. If only they could see that, then they'd realize how he's just as good as Batman and all of, I have those fantasies going on in my head that I want people to share my love of these characters. And I do, I genuinely do. But you know what I've discovered? That maybe it isn't as simple as that. Maybe even if people saw the version that I have in my head, that they still wouldn't rate Superman the way that I rate Superman, or they still wouldn't give it a chance, and that's a humbling thing, because for all intents and purposes, people saw, versions. Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Look, you got 2 minutes, okay? Because I'm about to go kill some people in Fortnite. But the fundamental
Hmm.
problem that you're misunderstanding or that you're being obtuse to is the fact that there are performative motherfuckers on this platform. Okay. And that's all it is. They don't care about the characters, they don't care about the characterization. All they
They've
care
never read the
about
comics. Yeah.
is getting clicks. And that's it. And whatever way they can do it, if they're going to be insulted that, oh my God, the Suicide Squad's killing the Justice League. How dare Harley Quinn kill Superman or Batman or whoever she kills? I don't even know. I haven't even paying attention to shit because it's all white noise to me. Like I appreciate because you got people like Shifty here who's listening to you because he's listening to you, not because you're being performative, not because you're being outraged, not because like, oh my God, Wonder
Mm.
Woman says something about toxic masculinity or something like that. Like we're beyond the point. Nerdman, we suffered through the pandemic on YouTube. We know what it was like. Okay. This is
Mm.
what these motherfuckers do. And that's all that they do. And I'm hoping, Ethan Van Sciver is a very talented artist. He drew some
Hmm.
of the most iconic Flash, Green Lantern books. Like,
Yeah,
nobody will ever take that away from him. But he is a troll. He is a troll of the highest order. And right now,
absolutely.
he is really giving it to all of these grifters. Like I can't believe like I don't want to say they're eating themselves, but like he's really dragging each and every one of them. Like that bald-headed white dude that was screaming about pronouns in a game before. Like
Yeah.
he really does not like him because I guess he was going on a rant about George R. R. Martin, and Ethan's like, you have no right to say any of these things that you're saying about Martin. He's like, create something. What have you created at? You've done nothing. And you're sitting on
Right.
here talking about him shutting the fuck up and all that other stuff. And mind you, I hate Game of Thrones. I'm not watching it. Screw him, screws dragons and all that shit after what he said about the season finale of Lost. But he's right. He created something. He created something that this motherfucker
And
didn't.
that's my absolute point. With
Yes.
all of these people with this game, it's like, dude, they went out and created something. They put themselves on the line. And actually, there's very few times that I've seen in these
Mm-hmm.
films, even in movies that I fucking hate,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where I'm like, they genuinely did this out of just a cynical cash grab. Like there was no, like how would you put it? Like um, you can see that they actually were trying to create something good. Like when I see this Suicide Squad game,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, I've watched all the cutscenes. There's stuff I like, there's stuff I don't like, but they were genuinely trying to create something good. There
Well,
was at least a degree, a modicum of passion involved in them making this thing.
that
So
can happen, but you also
either way, you're just going to say, so either it's a good game and these people are just being, being this fake outrage over this guy being, what's his name, being killed in the fucking
Batman.
the Batman voice actor
Oh, Kevin
being
Conroy.
killed in Kevin Conroy being killed in this,
Hmm.
or they're right and the game is not as that good or
Well, but
whatever,
see, but this is
and then all you can say is they had a bad day at the office. This is not Batman and Robin. There's very few times where it's like, okay, Batman and Robin is some bullshit. That is like a studio trying to sell for us fucking Big Macs.
well, but
You
see, but
know,
hold on, wait, no, but you can't even know because it's going against what you just said about like John Byrne and everything. Because I'm sure Joel Schumacher, he had his own thing in mind, whereas Burton did
right,
his thing. Schumacher was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go back to the campiness of the '60s, and that's
right,
what he did.
absolutely,
He took the Tim Burton of it, and he's like, okay, it's gonna be campy, and there it is, and that's what it was. But you're also losing another component, or forgetting another
hmm
component, or
hmm
ignoring another component, where we don't know some of the business decisions that these studios, Marvel, DC, any comic book studio, whatever, it
hmm
doesn't matter, are doing behind the scenes. Like for instance, with Miles Morales, it's almost a surefire guarantee that one of the reasons they created him was in case Steve Ditko's estate drew out their claim or their blocking or whatever the court case was
right,
regarding Spider-Man. That's what
right,
this is. They want to have versions. And the whole, I think I commented on another stream of yours where these characters, Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, they're going to be going into public domain in like 10 years.
right, absolutely. So they
And
need newer versions and to
yes,
update them so that you can't just
yes.
use that. Yeah, no, absolutely, I
Exactly, and
agree with that.
that's some of the reason
That's
why
some of the reason.
some of these things are
But
happening the way they are happening.
I'm not talking about the studio necessarily. I'm talking about the creative and the hatred towards even Batman and Robin. Like, dude, that's a bad day at the office.
Well, but
Like,
that's what I'm saying, but if they don't like
and
it, there's a reason.
you're right. Even me saying like it was cynical and this, that, and the other. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe he genuinely loved that Batman 60s show or whatever, and he grew up
Yeah,
with it and he wanted to make
it's
a
possible,
version
yeah,
of that,
yeah,
like for the modern age,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Maybe that was it. You
we
you
don't know.
can't just presume, right? Like, because that guy's a great filmmaker, by the way. He
Mhm,
made, like
yeah, Lost Boys.
Falling Down, Lost Boys, some
Mhm,
great films. So
yeah,
I don't see any reason why all of a sudden he's just going to become a trash
yeah,
filmmaker. You know what I'm saying? So I absolutely agree with you. And you've got this fat fucking neckbeard who's done nothing in fucking life. He's a fucking loser with a big fucking L. That should be fucking tattooed on his head, fucking
exactly.
screaming about these guys who actually have created something. They've actually done something. They've invented something in the world.
Well, and
And
not only
if
that, but
you
this isn't the main DC universe. Like, if this was the main thing, you're like, oh yeah, you know
right,
what, we're killing the Justice League. Then I would understand people
how
getting upset. This is like a
how
fucking Elseworlds thing.
Mike, how many times have people, these characters been killed in the comics?
I
How
know,
many
I
times?
know, I know, I
And
know,
this is
I
like,
know.
and I just think about it, like, think about, and luckily we didn't have Twitter in our day or whatever. I'm not sure how things would have gone when the first Batman movie came out
Hmm.
or the first X-Men movie came out. And there was Twitter. I don't know how things would have gone,
Yeah,
but I'm just happy because we wouldn't have even got to this stage where
I
we're
know,
having so much stuff getting. I
dude.
still get joy just seeing characters from comic books on
If
the
the
big screen,
if the
and
internet, if social media existed in the '70s and the '80s and the '90s, I swear to God, I don't even want to think about what the landscape would have been then.
of the
Like,
world. We're
yeah,
talking about comic books, which
well,
even
definitely
don't
this. I
don't
mean, yeah,
even
no,
matter. But like, think about the world in general.
yeah, yeah,
But it's become a toxic cesspool.
Yeah. But I think some
That
of it, I think there is toxicity, but I also think some of it is performative. Not that they're not toxic individuals inside, but they're accentuating it for their audience because they want to amuse people and they want to get the clicks and they want to engage, have people engage. Like I saw some idiot complain about how his channel is being shadow banned, and he started a Patreon which is free, and the 60,000 subscribers that he has didn't go over to the Patreon. There's only like 300. And I'm like, well, maybe because they don't like your content. Maybe they subscribed and they don't really unsubscribe, or maybe they're not using YouTube anymore, or you got lost within the hundreds of subscriptions they might have. Like, they clearly don't care about you. It's not that your message, like your videos are trash, what you say is trash, and maybe
mhm.
people just don't like you. How about that? Why does it always have to be like this grand conspiracy of, oh, well, and the content? Maybe it's your content. Maybe it's what you're doing. You ever think about that? Maybe it's how you're presenting it. I just
Right.
there's so many other things, but you're
Maybe it's
saying,
like your neckbeard that people just don't like to really
you know,
watch, like unless they're, themselves neckbeard. But
yeah.
and perhaps those neckbeards that you think are so
Well,
faithful to you don't want to pay to watch you. They just,
now
maybe
he's
enjoy
pivoting towards
watching you rant on the
Scientology.
for
He's
free.
pivoting towards Scientology and doing Scientology streams, and it's like
It,
it's so
it
painfully obvious that this individual is a
you're
grifter.
you're you're
He's a
a-
grifter.
you're absolutely right about the grifters. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you put it like that. Um, as I said, like for me, my thing is as well that I kind of understand some of the impulse of comic book fans who follow
Hmm.
these grifters, because
Yeah.
in my head, as I said, there's certain films I've gone into where I don't think I've given them a fair shot because I had a film in my head, I had a film in my mind that I
Mm-hmm.
expected that film to be,
Well, and I also
and
understand
and it,
shit
and
he's
it and it
saying where
wasn't
he
that.
says that they wanted a Superman game and all that stuff, and I get that, but like there are characters, the fans of characters that hardly ever get used. I know what you're saying. I understand, because you would think that Superman is one of the Trinity, so they would do right by him. But it's clear they have an agenda where they're pushing all the Batman stuff because Batman sells, and in
And
DC's
also, and
defense.
also, and also, in DC's defense, right? Every time you put out something about Superman,
Mhm.
the experts,
Oh,
the
well, no, I mean,
professors of
no,
Superman, come out of
no.
the woodworks.
I'm not
They
even
do.
going on about that.
They do.
I'm talking about the management at DC, because they haven't had a stable regime there for I don't know how
Oh
long.
no, absolutely. The
Okay,
management
so
at DC has been terrible, especially when
yes,
it comes to other characters.
so
They've
that's the main
caused
thing.
they've caused their own nightmare
Yes,
by
yes,
having pushed Batman to the
yes,
moon and
yes,
made it like all of
yes,
the rest of the characters are just completely secondary, uninteresting
yes.
characters in comparison
Every
to the
single
grand Batman.
character.
And
Yes.
that's how people view DC now.
Yep.
That's how people, like
Yep.
Wonder Woman got some love with her film, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but the rest of the characters are pretty much, apart from Joker, who's come out of this movie renaissance, elevated because everyone's like, how would I put it? Like the in I think during I think it was ever since Batman Returns or The Dark Knight Returns,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That there was just this thing of Batman is the ultimate cool character, right? And it seeped into the DC writers themselves so much so that I saw people in DC bad mouthing Wonder Woman, talking about how you couldn't really do a Wonder Woman movie.
See,
They
that
don't
I
really
don't.
understand how to do a Wonder Woman animated thing.
I don't
And the and
understand
the
that,
and
dude.
the issue now is, and I don't know how
Did you
Marvel
see
have
that
done
thing?
it.
I forgot what issue it was where she was talking about. I think she was either talking to Superman or Batman or one of the characters, and she was like, "Oh, so and so went to go deal with this person again," and they're like, "Oh, they're always dealing with him or something." And she's like, "Well, that's why I don't have to deal with that problem, because I take care of the problem right then and
Oh
there."
yeah, yeah,
Meaning,
yeah.
like,
I didn't love that, but
well,
she
but see,
kills
dude.
she kills her villains. Yeah.
Well, I mean, she is an Amazon. Come on, dude. Come on, come on.
Yeah,
But I
I
agree
mean,
with you. I mean, yes, and that is also part of the problem with Superman. There are a lot of people that refer to him as the big blue Boy Scout. They don't want that. If they always say who's better, Batman or Superman, it's always Batman because Batman is
yeah,
grittier,
but
I guess. Even though he doesn't kill people
yeah,
either.
and that's
So,
what I was
you know.
just saying about, like, in my head, I have this head canon in my head where I know if they could see how I see Superman, and maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but like if they could see how I see Superman,
Mhm.
then they would love Superman, right? But maybe not, because for all intents and purposes, I mean, both Shazam movies, right, didn't meet up to my grandest expectations
Mhm.
of what they should do with a Shazam movie. Like, I would
Mhm.
have liked to see them explore the Rock of Eternity more, the different realms, the seven realms, and whatever, more
Right.
of that kind of stuff. But they did a pretty fucking decent job. And guess what? People don't love Shazam. They don't see Shazam the way I see him. Now, the other aspect of this is that I think the characters that have benefited the most off of this movie renaissance have been those characters that people grew up with, right? Like, so, for instance, with the animated series of Batman,
Mhm.
the animated series of, Spider-Man, some of the games that they've done with Batman,
I
Spider-Man,
had some customers come in
X-Men,
today with Batman Beyond. They were
right,
talking about it.
right, X-Men. Every time you see people who are asking about films, asking DC to do this film, that film, it's mainly because they've seen a character in an animated series. That's why Blue Beetle, which was, to be honest, I'm sorry, quite a painfully average movie. Not terrible. I thought it was fairly good, but nothing special. It was like we've seen a lot of this origin story material before, but
Right.
I liked it. I liked
Yeah.
it. It wasn't
So did
anything.
I.
But
Mhm.
one of the things that people, um, you know, I think were kind of gassing it up is because of this animated show, which
Mhm.
some kids grew up with like this.
Yeah.
They saw Blue Beetle, they saw Jaime Reyes, and they wanted to see him in live action. It makes a fucking difference, and the fact that DC didn't get off their fucking stupid, they had a genuine gem with the Batman show in the 90s. They did Superman. They had some kind of thing. I think they did a Green Lantern one that didn't quite work out. So maybe I'm being a little bit hard on them. But
Mhm.
they should have done Wonder Woman. They should have done Flash. They should have done these characters, and people would have grown up with them and been excited to see them on screen. And if you notice, that is what Marvel did.
Well,
Marvel
that's
was
also
never ashamed of any of
that's
their characters. They had Silver Surfer. They had
but
an Iron
but
Man show
hold
at
on,
one
that's
point.
also part of the problem though, is that they also had one eye on Marvel. They were like trying to keep up with Marvel. Marvel got a head start for some reason. I don't remember the exact, I mean, other than maybe Iron Man with 2009, I think it was. But it's weird because Batman and Superman, those were the first two like comic
Mm.
book movies of note. Like, they already
But I'm
led.
talking about animated shows.
Oh,
I'm
you're talking about
talking about the
animated. Okay.
anime.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm saying that the animated shows, they
Oh,
should have
yeah.
done
Animated.
more of
Yeah.
those, and people would have grown up with them, and then they would be excited to see these guys in film. That's the thing that's missing from
Right.
characters like Aquaman and Shazam
Right.
and Wonder Woman. People
They had the
aren't,
Justice League.
they're not like, oh man, we've seen Black Manta, but I would love to see, this other villain of Aquaman be realized. Like, oh my God, what if because you can't really, the way Batman teases the next villain, like these Batman films, they
Right.
tease the next villain, right? And you
Right.
can even do quite obscure ones with Batman, and it'd be like, oh my God, they're actually going to do that, right?
Yeah.
You could do that with Superman to some extent because of
Yeah.
the Superman
Oh, dude,
animated
look what
series,
they did in
but
the
you
third
can't do
season. The
that with
third season
Wonder
of
Woman.
Justice League. They
Yeah,
had the big three weren't even in there. They had
yeah,
all the supporting characters, and
yeah,
that was an awesome show. And then
yeah.
they canceled it.
Right, exactly. But you saw at the end of Shazam, right, that they had Mr. Mind,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was like nobody knew what that meant.
Right.
right? Like I was
Except people that read the
excited.
comic
I
books.
I was excited because I'd read the comic books. I was like,
Yep.
holy shit, they're gonna do Mr. Mind. That's the coolest thing ever,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know. But everyone else is like, why is there a
Yep.
caterpillar?
Yep.
You know, like, what's the significance of the caterpillar? But yeah,
Mhm.
no, they did though, some good series. I think they did mainly good team up series, but they
Mhm.
didn't inherently, by saying these characters can't hold their own
Right. On
cartoon
their own, right. Well,
franchise.
but see, but no,
you're you're
Nerdman,
you're already you're already saying like they're not as good as Batman
they're
and
al
Superman.
they're already gonna do that. They like what like Blue Beetle proved that. They won't give anything that's not Batman or even, I mean, even Superman or whatever a shot because they're not seen as the A characters. Like even Iron Man, all these people are like on Iron Man's dick about like, oh yeah, he's so great and all that. Like, dude, he was like a D-list character in the
Right.
Marvel universe. Let's not even start with like
Absolutely.
him being an A-list. He wasn't. Even
He
Captain
wasn't.
America, to be
I don't
honest with
even
you.
think people read his comics these
I
days.
know.
Like
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
even
No,
since these films of Iron
no,
Man, like
they don't. They don't.
what Iron Man comics have come out that have been like amazing, like or that
None
have
really.
been,
None
you
really.
know,
Yeah.
I don't think that
He's a boring
character
character.
has it like that. He's a
Yeah.
boring character
It's
that he's
RDJ. He's
just
the one that
it's
did it. His
RDJ.
performance. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
completely RDJ.
All right, that's it. I'm done, nerd man.
But
I got to go
decent.
murder people, and you just had me slander the MCU for some reason. I don't even understand how you work that out, but I got to get off before any more of this happens.
All right.
But
Thanks,
yeah,
man.
but so
Talk to you
just point out the performativeness of the morons on the internet. It's basically what it
later.
is.
I think I've said what I need to say recently to a large degree, but I'll check some of the
Yeah.
chat, see what they're saying. But
All right, man.
yeah, peace, man.
See you.
Thanks. Good
No problem.
points. Yeah. So Mike came on. That was interesting. But he has a great point. The performative nature of a lot of these kind of guys on who pretend to be outraged about this stuff. Are they really outraged? Do they really care? You know, is it's hard to say. I don't think they do, and I think they're doing it to get clicks. I think they see that Suicide Squad versus Kills the Justice League is getting a lot of traffic. So they've decided to be outraged about something. But I cannot genuinely see how an adult human being who read comics as a child and understands the nature of comics, right? That hey, characters die and come back all the time. This isn't even the main universe, right? This is they're going to continue. They've already got a Wonder Woman game planned, for God's sake, coming out of DC, which obviously things like this is going to impact because now they're going to second guess whether they should bring that Wonder Woman game out when everyone's just fucking shitting on this Suicide Squad game for no reason. So, but clearly the Justice League are going to be in other games down the line. I would hope for a Green Lantern game or a Flash game or something like that. But you know how DC is; it's all Batman and Superman. Well, Batman when it comes to the games. But yeah, they're at least flirting with bringing out a Wonder Woman game. So clearly, this wouldn't have been the last we're ever going to see of the Justice League in games. For me, even though I think the game is pretty good and the story is quite, interesting and, it's an engaging story, I really am fed up of this dark Justice League stuff. I would love a Justice League game where they were actually fucking heroes because that's what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be heroes, right? Rather than being the villains of the game. But fair enough. This is their way of seeing the Suicide Squad. This is how they see those characters. And they made an interesting game where they would have to face the Justice League. And it was cool to see, Flash using his powers and against the Suicide Squad and how they depicted that. There were good things in this game. um, I just don't see the outrage, and I'm so fed up of these DC fans who are all these fucking experts. And it's one thing I forgot to ask Mike about. I really wanted to ask him. Even though you own a comic book shop, what percentage of comics that have ever been written do you believe that you've read? Because these characters have evolved, and every single writer, this is not one writer, this is not two writers, every single writer and artist who comes to these characters comes from a completely different perspective. And somebody who's going to make a film or a adaptation in games or cartoons is going to necessarily come to these characters from a completely different perspective, depending on the comics they read, depending on the comics they enjoyed growing up. Especially with the gamers and the people who make the cartoons, right? Because they're the people who I genuinely do think actually are people who read the comics and love the comics. I mean, you cannot watch like the X-Men 90s animated series and go, oh, that isn't people who loved the comics. They read the comics genuinely and pretty much adapted them, you know, for face value. But um, and it's the same with the Justice League animated series. These were people who read the comics, they read the material, at least the Justice League stories. Um, so, um, uh, you know, regarding those guys, when it comes to games and animated stuff and all of these things, it completely depends on what you grew up with. It depends on what you love, what you saw growing up, and how you saw these characters growing up, as to how you're going to depict them. And again, in this game, if it was completely off the mark how they depicted, like Harley Quinn in this game seems to be acting like Harley Quinn. Flash seems to be acting like Flash. Obviously, Superman isn't acting like Superman because once again he's fucking evil, which is another, a problem I have with this game. It would have been nice to see maybe Superman be the character that for once wasn't turned, you know, um, or he's good at first, or he breaks, maybe Wonder Woman could have broken him free of his spell or something like that, and Superman helped somehow, take on somebody, one character, or three of the characters. I don't know, whatever. But the point is that, yeah, like the characters who were supposed to be like themselves, like Wonder Woman, like Harley Quinn, like Captain Boomerang, like King Shark, who was much better than the movie version. All of those characters were done to a lesser or greater extent how I see them and read them in the comics. Flash, when he first appeared, before he turned bad, was how I see him in the comics and how I've read him in the comics. So this is just us going, I don't like what you did with our toys. I don't like what you did with our action figures. It's not an actual genuine criticism of the story because they knew the Justice League was going to be killed in this story, considering it's called Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League. So anyway, that's what I came on to kind of talk about. Rant. I hoped that K Dots would uh, jump on at some point, but since he hasn't come yet, it was nice to have um, Mike on again, my frenemy. um, but let's see. Before I go, any comments that uh, I did talk about that comment before. Uh, they had all these interesting characters. I'll say this as well. One thing that all of these guys forget is that if you don't like this story, this specific story, then you can always go back, right, and watch the stories that you do like. They're still there. They still exist. You don't have to have this hate boner. And all you're doing is you're making, because if you love these characters, like I do, I support the characters that I love. I might even go out and buy this game, even though I don't have the console, just so that I know that people know that there's interest in seeing these characters, in computer games, that I have an interest in seeing them in computer games. I might genuinely go out. I'm certainly buying the Wonder Woman game, and I'm gonna absolutely. I would probably buy the console just to play the Wonder Woman game and sell the console after. I'm dead serious. Like I'm so I that and a Superman game or a Flash game, my fantasy. I would love to just play around in the world of Superman or the world of Wonder Woman or the world of Shazam. Uh, Count me in. Any of those games come out, I'm buying the console. But in general, um, um, I love these characters, and I love that I grew up with comics, and I love the perspective that growing up with comics gave me. I love the fact that that was the first thing to fuel my imagination in terms of storytelling, and I still use them as templates to this day when I am writing my own stuff. So I love these characters. They've given a lot to me, but still, they are just comic book characters. Let's not go fucking wild and crazy about this. They aren't, anything worth getting this venomous over, this angry, this, childish. There is much more pressing concerns in the fucking world right now than whether Batman gets killed in a game. There really is. And I wish I was using my YouTube platform to talk about those issues. And maybe I will, or once I move, I'll start using YouTube to talk about different things that I think are more pressing issues worth discussing in the world. But the reason I talk about these characters is because I fucking love them. I'm not ashamed of that. I do. I fucking love them. The great characters that I've grown up with. But in the end of the day, they've got millions of stories that I can go and read my favorite versions of them. And if anyone fucks them up, I've still got those versions that I can go back to, and get my fix. There's plenty, especially the Batman stuff. Oh, Batman got killed in this game, and it was Kevin Conroy's last performance. He's got a plethora of work as Batman that you can go back to. That you don't have to get super fucking upset that they did this with him in the game. So that's me. I don't really have a lot more to say on this. I was looking to see if there was any um, comments that I hadn't got to, and most of the comments I've already spoken about. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna say peace out, and thanks Tony for joining. Thanks Rogue. Thanks Shiftygasm. Thank Bruce Wayne. All the people in the comments. I'm out. Peace.